Okay, so I'd like to try to explain something which I suspect most people misunderstand. It's not such an easy concept, and I have to ask your indulgence to try and listen carefully to what I'm saying, so we can understand something which otherwise we wouldn't understand. So, we all understand and appreciate that the Ein HaMetzarim, the period of what we call the 3 weeks, which runs from Shiva Asar B'Tammuz until Tisha B'Av, is called, it's a period of Paranusa. It's called a period of punishment. It's a period where Klal Yisrael is being punished for whatever has gone on and continues to go on. But I want to explain carefully that we shouldn't get confused by this concept of being punished, otherwise we're going to lose the whole message of the Galut. You know that if your son, and he's 5 years old, and you tell him not to do this, and he does it, you tell him, please stand in the corner for 2 minutes, or whatever you say to him, stand in the corner, do this, you can't play for 3 minutes. So that's a punishment. Well, this is the consequence. I told you not to do it. If you do it, this is the consequence. And you hope that he'll get the message that it's not worth doing it, because look what happens. You end up outside in the corner, you can't play, whatever you do. But then there isn't really any connection between standing in the corner and what he did. Just a tool. You have a tool. I have a tool, a resource that I'm going to use to try to educate this fellow, try to make him understand how he should behave. And the tool, I used the corner, or I used depriving him of some playtime, or I took away a candy that he was going to get. That's not how Kodesh Baruch Hu deals with the Jewish people. Kodesh Baruch Hu deals with the Jewish people, first of all, it's always midah keneged midah. That means the punishment, if there is a punishment, always has to reflect in it the original sin. And so a classic, it doesn't work that way, but a classic example would be if a person uses his hand to steal, so his hand would become paralyzed. I'm not saying it works that way, but that would be a classic example of midah keneged midah. You used your hand inappropriately. You think you can use the hand any way you like. You can't use it any way you like. I'm going to teach you that the hand is restricted and limited only to do things that I told you. If you use it inappropriately, Tishkach Yemini, I will take away your ability to use the right hand. That's one level. But the truth is that the period of the Bein HaMetzarim is a deeper form of relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, deeper than just midah keneged midah. And it means the following. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world with specific goals and specific aspirations. The world is not a playground, not a place where you come in and play around for 100 years and try and do a couple of good things and win up a couple of points, so when you come to the next world, you can be given a little bit of a reward. This world is exclusively given to us with a tafkid, and the tafkid, the responsibility, is to perform Torah and mitzvahs, whatever that means to a man, what it means to a woman, what it means to different people at different times, but there's an agenda. And basically the agenda is written in the Torah and it appears in the Shulchan Aruch. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about what a person comes to the world for. What's his roadmap? The roadmap exists in the Shulchan Aruch and it exists in the Torah. Or more correctly, it exists in the Torah and is distilled into the Shulchan Aruch. Kadosh Baruch Hu made a world where He desired that He would be able to live with us in that world. It wasn't just a place where we could be challenged and hopefully do what is right, and when we've done what is right, get tzachar and go to Olam Haba. But this Olam Hazeh, this world, should be a place where we and the Rebbeinu Shalom could live together in harmony. The Ramban, in the introduction to Sefer Shemot, in his Perush on the Chumash, the Ramban says a big chidush. The Ramban says that what is Yitzias Mitzrayim? What constitutes the Exodus? So we left Egypt, that's the Exodus. No. We left Egypt, and then we received the Torah. And if we hadn't received the Torah, there wouldn't have been a lot of meaning in leaving Egypt. We leave Egypt, what will happen? Where do we go now? We go to the beach, we go to the stadium. Where do we go? No, we go to Har Sinai, and we're granted the Torah. So in my mind, I would have said, that's it. The shlemut, the perfection, the completion of the Exodus lies in our arrival at Har Sinai, receiving the Torah. Now we have a mandate, we know what we have to do for the rest of the time. But the Ramban says, no, that's not the end of the Geula. The Geula isn't over, it isn't complete, until we leave Mitzrayim, we go to Har Sinai and get the Torah, and then we get a Mishkan, a tabernacle, where the Shekhinah can permanently reside in our midst. Which Shekhinah? The same level of Shekhinah that you saw at Har Sinai, when we were given the Torah. That should become a permanent fixture by Klal Yisrael, ensconced in the Mishkan, so that we have a place where Kaviyachal HaKadosh Baruch Hu is domiciled among us, he resides among us, and that's the shlemut, that is the completion, that is the perfection of the Geula. So you have three stages. Leaving Mitzrayim, where you're enslaved, where your life is, you're just, working for other people, accomplishing nothing. Next level is you get the Torah, so you have a mandate what to do. And thirdly, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm going to live among you, because that's the ultimate accomplishment of the person in this world, is that we and the Rebbeinu Shalom can live together, because we'll utilize the world in the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted us to. He'll be proud of us, we'll be comfortable with him, and we'll all live together, and that will be the shleimus of the Bria. So let me give you a mashal to understand what I want to say now. Unfortunately, the mashal is not a perfect comparison, but you'll understand. Unfortunately, it's very understood in this generation. If you have a grandfather, or sometimes in this generation we're even privileged to a great-grandfather. So you have somebody from 60, 70, 80 years ago. And he has progeny, he has children, he has grandchildren, he has great-grandchildren. And one of the family members, it's a big family, flourishing family, so one of the family members makes a suda, for whatever reason. Whether it's a bar mitzvah, whether it's a pidyon haben, whether it's some other event, whatever it is, some event which the entire family is invited. And they come to the father and they say to the old grandfather, and they say to him, please grace us with your presence, please make sure you turn up. You are the patriarch, you are the Abba, you are the grandfather of this whole family. Please come and sit at the top of the table and join us. Perfectly normal request. So, what's going to determine whether he'll come? What's going to determine whether he will stay? And what's going to determine whether he'll ever come back? There are three questions. Is the grandfather going to come? Number two, is he going to stay? Maybe he'll come and walk out. Maybe he won't walk out, but he won't come back. So what's it dependent upon? So it's very simple. When he created, quote unquote, this family, he created a family which he had goals and aspirations for that family. It means there's a dress code. I don't mean literally uniform, but there's a dress code. In my family, people dress with tzniut. They dress modestly. They dress appropriately. Women cover their hair. When men wear a yarmulke, the shirts, the pants, the dresses, whatever all the other things are, they have a certain surah. They have a certain, this is the way you know. This is the way that I educated you. So come. I would like to see my family dressing in this manner. The things we say, the things we don't say. We don't say lashon hara, and we don't say nibul peh, things, expletives, and we don't talk about fantasies and ridiculous things. We try to talk about meaningful things, hopefully divrei Torah, not all the time divrei Torah, but at least pleasant things, normal things, regular things, not discussing things that are not pleasant, not saying lashon hara, not talking about movies. That's not what I made the family about. When we eat, we don't grab and eat and look like behemoths when we eat and push other people aside. No, we eat nicely. The Rambam says that Kashem Shenika Talmud Chacham, the Talmud Chacham has to be recognized by how he comports himself and how he dresses. Also, B'derech Achilasa, the way that a Talmud Chacham eats also has to be recognized These are Talmid Chacham. He's not a person who's uncouth or a person who's not civilized, not refined. A person who is Shomer Mitzvah, that, you don't bring food here that's not kosher, you don't mix things that shouldn't be mixed, you don't bring women or men here who don't belong to this event because of whatever religious differences or different ethnic backgrounds. That's not what we spoke about, it's not what we did. So he comes there. He thinks it was okay, and he comes and he sits down. So whether he stays or not depends on what goes on there. If he starts seeing that whatever is going on here is not what he wants to see, after an hour he'll say, terribly sorry, but my back hurts, I have to go home. And he'll leave, he'll pack out. Will he come back? Probably not. He's not going to come back. Listen carefully. Okay, so he doesn't come back. So the world didn't come to an end, so he didn't come back. But it's not that way. The point is, even though the situation today is not good, but there's still hope because he's there, because he's somewhat awe-inspiring, because he's somewhat inspirational, because he's somewhat imposing, so that the people who are sitting there, even, so they're thinking, maybe should I marry this woman, she's a Gentile, but maybe I can do some sort of conversion, maybe there's a... So then he sees his grandfather, he says, I'm not so sure I want to do that. But if he doesn't see his grandfather, he hasn't got any problem. What's the big deal? Somebody else did it, the other guy did it, this guy did it, this one did it, this one said it, this one is good. So, or a person is lowering their standards of tzniut, the way that they dress. And they see that the father, the grandfather, the grandmother come and reminds them, our family has a certain tradition. If he doesn't come, there's no tradition. So then everyone else does this, so why can't I be lenient? So when the grandfather and the grandmother, when they pull themselves out of the equation, they disappear and they walk away, and they pull themselves out of the equation, so the guidelines and the direction which came from the previous generation has disappeared. It's no longer there. So then you look 30 years later, 40 years later, it's unrecognizable that there was once a grandfather. You come to this thing, it's a zoo. Where do these people grow up? What's the matter with them? I thought they came from some sort of Orthodox family. It's gone. It's ne'elam me'al pnei hashetach. It disappears completely. Because he's not there, he's not participating, he and she, they don't bring the right ruach, they don't bring the right example, they don't bring the right tradition. And from there it precipitates a downhill spiral which can go eventually out of control. As the train is going down the hill, and the brakes aren't working, so in the beginning it's only going 8 miles an hour, then it goes 20 miles an hour, then it goes 30 miles an hour, then it goes 100 miles an hour. Nobody can stop it. Within a short time, everything disappears. So when we talk about Galut, we're not talking about Hashem punished us by saying, you don't deserve my presence, so I'm going to pull out. Forget about the punishment. Put the punishment aside right now. Leave out, that concept's not going to help us. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm pulling out and I don't want to be here, it means that the next generation, or even this generation, no longer has anything to hold on to as they're trying to find their bearings, as they're trying to organize their life, as they're trying to make decisions, as they're trying to understand how to deal with challenges. They no longer have this. And that aura, and that light, and that clarity that comes from the old grandparents and their message disappears, and everything becomes disarray. So that's what Galut is. You want to know, what does it mean? You see children go off the derech. Sometimes there's a reason for it. Plenty of times there's no reason for it. Well, there has to be a reason. That's what you say. I'm telling you the reason is Galus. The reason is Galut. The reason is dislocation. The reason is because there's no grandfather. Because there's no aura of Kedusha that's brought down. Families crumble. I don't know, you suddenly find people get divorced. Well, yeah. Had enough. What does it mean, had enough? What is this? It's tea time, we had one piece of cookie, you don't need the next cookie. What does it mean, had enough? That's not for me. Or some guy says he was Shomer Shabbos. This is too much to be Shomer Shabbos now. In today's age, you don't need to be Shomer Shabbos. Or whatever people think and say, these are all reflections of Galut. There are reflections of being buried among the Gentiles around us who have zero values, and our barrier between ourselves and them disappears, and the guidance and the light that we're meant to see, which tells us exactly how we should go, our moral compass, our religious compass, that disappears off the face of the earth. There is no central Beis HaMikdash, a Beit HaMikdash, where you can go and you feel, one goes to the Kotel Ma'aravi today, you feel 100,000th of what you felt when you came to the Beit HaMikdash. You came to the Beit HaMikdash, it was a place full of miracles. It was a place of Kohanim, who were all holy people. You could see on their face, you could see their commitment, you could see their intensity, you could see how they were involved in the spirituality of the Korbanot. People who came there wanted to bring Korbanot in order to get a kapara, to get an atonement. There was an atmosphere of tshuva. You came to Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim was a serious city. It was a city where people who lived there with a level of commitment to Torah and mitzvahs. You want to know how important all of this is? The Torah commanded us, shalosh pamim b'shana, you have to go oleh regel, you have to go up to the Yereh Kol Zechurcha. Every male has to appear in Yerushalayim. Think a second. 3 times a year you have to come to Yerushalayim, Eretz Kodesh, to appear in the Beis HaMikdash. So 3 times a year is Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. This is the age when there was no cars, no helicopters, no planes. So what happens if a guy lived in Haifa? How long did it take him to get from Haifa to Yerushalayim? It took him at least a week, maybe 10 days. It's one thing if he's going by himself, he gets in the back of a horse. He's not going by himself. He's going with his wife, and his second wife, and his mother-in-law, and his 23 children, and his 45 grandchildren, and his grandmother-in-law. How's he going to get there? So he goes for Pesach, and he spends 4 weeks or 5 weeks going backwards and forwards. As soon as he gets home, he gets a knock on the door from his friend, Motla, are you ready to go? It's Shavuos in 3 weeks. Going back for Shavuot. And then he has to go back for Sukkot. When he goes back for Sukkot, where's he going to pray on Rosh Hashanah, this person? Rosh Hashanah is 15 days before Sukkot. He can't make it in 15 days. So he's going to leave his home, and he's going to have to find some synagogue on the way for Rosh Hashanah, because he's making his way to Yerushalayim for Sukkot. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu muchi to go 3 times a year to Yerushalayim? The exposure to the Beis HaMikdash and the Shechina Beis HaMikdash was so vital that if you don't have it, Klal Yisrael won't survive. It doesn't matter what the cost is. So you can imagine what it looks like when we don't have it. Imagine what type of Jews are we who never even saw that. Forget about we don't go 3 times a year. We never saw it. The best we saw was the Kotel Ma'aravi. The Kotel Ma'aravi is the last vestige of Shekhinah, the last little bit of Shekhinah that exists in the world. But it's a drop compared to the ocean of the Beit HaMikdash. So that what happened? HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't punish us. Maybe he did. That's not the point. He said to us, you know what? It's not working out. It's not fair to ask me to come to join you and live among you to be insulted all day long. If you're not going to maintain the standards and the direction that I gave you, if you can't live in harmony, if you can't respect one another, if you can't stop talking Lashon Hara, if you can't stop being tremendously materialistic, if you can't get your act together, son, I have nothing to do with you, you know. Gesundheit, do whatever you like, but I can't be there. You know, if a person hurts their knee, they go to the doctor says you tore a ligament, or there's something everybody tears on the knee, I forgot what it's called. So you go to the, fine, you have a knee. So the knee, you're struggling a bit, you limp a little bit because there's something wrong with your knee. A week later your back starts hurting. So you go to a back doctor. He says, there's nothing wrong with your back, but my back hurts. Another week later your other knee starts hurting. Then your neck is dislocated. Why? Because if your knee doesn't work properly and you're no longer walking straight and you're now bent over and you're now limping, so the result of limping and being bent over is the body is dislocated and everything ultimately is going to hurt. So you have the Shekhinah pulls out and we get a little bit weaker here and a little bit weaker there, and suddenly the whole thing is dislocated, everything hurts. The family isn't working, the children aren't working, the schools aren't working. So what's wrong? There isn't 78 problems, there's one problem, lack of Shekhinah. There's one problem in the Jewish people, and that is that we don't have Shekhinah. We don't have the guidance from Hashem, we don't have the light of Hashem among us. And every other problem that you see, people will ask, why would we mourn the destruction of the temple? Why don't you mourn the Churban of Europe, the Holocaust from 70 years ago? What are you worried about 2,000 years ago? 70 years ago, 6.5 million people were killed. That's what you should be thinking about. Because the 6 million people who died in the Shoah, that came from the Churban, that came from the distance of Hashem. in whatever reason or how it happened, but that's where it comes from. And the tragedies we see in front of our eyes today, the unspeakable tragedies, they all come from Churban. That's where they come from. They don't come from the family misbehaving, or this husband not being this, or this wife. All those things might be true, but all of that, v'hakoil bichlal, comes from the fact we don't have Shekhinah. So when we want to sit here and we wonder, what do I, little Mrs. So-and-so, what do I got to do with mourning on the temple? I never saw the temple, I don't really think about the temple, I don't understand Korbanot. Make it very simple. Just, you have tzaros around you, nobody's arguing, we have tzaros around us, that's tzarot everywhere. Just understand, those tzarot represent the failure of having no Beit HaMikdash. They represent the absence of the Shekhinah. And in the absence of the Shekhinah, we can't accomplish anything. So we struggle and we struggle and we fight, and we do make some progress, but it's like climbing uphill with 100 pounds on your back. So instead of walking on a flat ground with no package, so you could walk 20 miles a day, you go up a hill with a package of 50 pounds. So you walk 2 feet a day. There's a big difference between walking 2 feet a day and walking 10 miles a day. There's a huge difference. We accomplish very little, we fail, we falter, this is difficult, that is difficult. So that's what we have to understand. That's why you have to appreciate that the halachot of the 9 days, I know that for Sephardim, many of the halachot are relatively lenient because they're made basically makpid on Shvur Shecholbo, only next week with Shvur Shecholbo. But there are Ashkenazim here and some Sephardim and other minhagim, and a person needs to know it's not a time to look for leniencies. This is not a thing, say, oh, this is hard for me, this is hard for me. It's meant to be hard. Living is also hard. Living in this world is hard. Living without Shekhinah is devastating. All the tzarot around us are reflecting that. So how hard can it be for 1 week to behave yourself? People, Ashkenazim don't eat meat from Rosh Chodesh. I don't know what the minhag of the Sephardim is. So people looking for ways to eat meat. What's the matter? You're suffering from malnutrition. Can I call a doctor for you? What's the matter? Look at you. You should be happy you're not eating. You need to lose 60 pounds anyway. What's the problem? So Shukah says this. He heard there's a siyum somewhere. Look at what the Magen Avraham says to the Maril about someone who goes to eat at a siyum where he doesn't belong. Have a look what it says there. They start shaking. It's simple. All HaKadosh Baruch Hu is asking is recognize the problem. If we'd recognize the problem, we'd fix it. I repeat what I'm saying. If we recognize the problem, we would fix the problem. We don't fix it because we don't recognize it. We think, no, Beit HaMikdash, big deal, so I have a shul. What are you talking about? You don't have a shul. You have no Shekhinah. So you have a place where you pray. Where's the Beit HaMikdash? Where's the Shekhinah? Where's the light on the children's faces? Where's the simcha of ish v'ishto? Where are all those things? They're buried in the Churban, the Beit HaMikdash. That's where they're buried. That's where they disappeared to. And if we're told by the Chachamim that this galut is particularly fired by sinat chinam, the empty, void hatred of people, I'll give you just one thing to think about. Everyone knows that there was some tragedies in this community last week, Rachmana litzlan. Let's give you one thing to think about. You have sinat chinam. Where does sinat chinam come from? Where does it start? Empty hatred. So you can't have hatred for no reason. So it starts with not valuing other people. That's how it starts. You have a next door neighbor, you look at him and you say, I don't see a big deal. What's this big? Who is this guy? You know, he works a little bit, he learns a little bit, he's got a wife, he's got kids. You don't value him. I'm not saying you speak badly of him, you may say not a word about him, but you don't value him. The next guy, not just you don't value him, you know, he's already not my type. The third guy, he's mamash a ganav. You started by not valuing this guy, the third guy is already a ganav. You don't even know anything about him, but you know that he's a ganav. The next one is a murderer, you know. So let me tell you something. When a person passes away, I don't mean anybody specific, anybody. When a person passes away, you suddenly realize, you know, this person was somebody's husband, it was somebody's father, it was somebody's son, maybe somebody's grandson, somebody's business partner, somebody's chavruta, some member of some minyan. Do I know what he was? 50 things. He doesn't have to be specially special, but that's what he did. Do you know who's going to fill all those voids? You didn't care about it. He's a nobody. In your mind, he was a nobody. How was he a nobody? He held out 15 things and you didn't even realize what he was holding out. His family held together because of him. His shul had a minyan because of him. Yes, he wasn't, maybe, I'm not referring to these people specifically, just saying generally. Maybe he wasn't so special, but the minyan in his shul worked because of him. And the chavruta worked because he turned up. And his grandfather was very happy to see him. His grandfather had a good life. And now he doesn't see him, maybe the grandfather will die by misnefesh. Do I know what's going to happen? So part of it, there's many things to discuss, but part of when you see these things going on, when you see God forbid children going off the derech, and you see what causes disarray in the family, you suddenly understanding everybody has to be in order. It's not so simple. People who behave properly and they're part of society are very important people. In the world today you can see, the majority of people in the street, you walk out in the street here, 95% of the people you're bumping into aren't married. Whether they're age 19, 30, 50 or 90, they're not married. They either never were married or they're divorced. So the ability to be married and have a family, even if you're just a regular Joe, is a big accomplishment. It's a massive accomplishment. Why aren't you machshav that? Why do you understand he's an important person? Or the lady's an important lady. Or lady brings her kids to school late or this. So she's not perfect. She has children, she brings them to school. She's a chashuva lady. Not an empty person with a poodle down the street trying to go find the next gym. She's a person who has some teich in her life. So, these are things we should think about very, very carefully. We should understand that the Churban Beit HaMikdash is, I repeat what I'm saying, is a result of our not valuing the presence of the Shekhinah, not wanting to live in a way which makes the Shekhinah comfortable. So the result is that the Shekhinah disappears. When the Shekhinah disappears, everything starts collapsing. And you can't ask, why did this happen or that happen? Because that's what happens. When there's no main beam to support everything, that's exactly what happens. So, and therefore one should be careful with the laws, particularly Tisha B'Av. And if there are some people who think they might have a problem fasting, the time to ask your Rav is now, not next Tuesday, not Monday afternoon at 5 o'clock. If you have problems fasting, get hold of a competent Rav and ask him, what do I do if I have to take this pill, or if I have a headache, or I'm a lactating mother, whatever. You think you have a shayla. I'm not sure if it is a shayla, but you're entitled to ask a shayla, get hold of a Rav, ask the shayla, and do what he says. Don't afterwards say he didn't understand you. If he doesn't understand you, ask again. Right? Make sure he does understand you. Whatever answer you get, that's what you'll do, and that's what the Torah wants of you. And if there's somebody who needs to eat on Tisha B'Av, he should eat, definitely, he or she should eat a drink. That doesn't mean it's not Tisha B'Av. You still have to go to the kinot, and you have to hear Eicha, and you should go to the video and hear Divrei Chizuk. It doesn't mean therefore you got a free pass. And no free pass, you technically can't fast. Okay, but you're still Tisha B'Av. You still have to conduct yourself with all the chumras of Tisha B'Av. Because Baruch, as my dear friend Rav Zagari said, and he is 100% correct, we have to be positive. We have to hope that Mitzvah Hashem still before Tisha B'Av Mashiach will come, and the read of the Tzaris will be able to Mitzvah Hashem to Nefach mi yoga in the Simcha.